Hello again everyone and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic? Let's do it. Night shift workers of Reddit. What's the scariest thing you've ever experienced? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Did some night shift at a small chemical plant. One night I'm walking the unit down and suddenly a bolt hits the ground next to me. A little bit later another, then another, more frequently. Half the plant is ripping itself apart. I'm 3 stories up and going to go down with the structure. Nah. Turns out some board operators on the 5th deck were following me around, dropping nuts and bolts down near me to spook me. Don't be a green engineer on night shift. The operators will F with you. I work at a mortuary where funeral homes send people to be embalmed and cremated, or will do removals. For a few months, I was working a solo 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. One night, as I'm cleaning up from an embalming, the power goes out. Now we have a backup generator for that reason, but this time it took about 5 to 6 seconds to kick back in. The prep room has no windows, obviously, and the doors have weather stripping, so it was pitch black. Then I heard the loudest crack of thunder I've ever heard. I may or may not have sat in the front office until dawn. I used to count liquor, beer, wine inventory in bars and restaurants, so my job started when those businesses closed around 4 a.m. One morning, I'm in a bar on Main Street of a town about an hour outside the city I live in, and I have the lights on inside the bar weighing bottles when I heard a knock on the window. There was a man in black and white face paint dressed as a clown smiling at me and waving. I panicked and ran into the basement to call the police and make sure I locked the back door. At that time, there was some guy walking around Green Bay at night dressed as a clown with black balloons. This kid thought it would be funny to do the same thing. I don't do clowns anymore. Worked at a gas station. Was approached to be a male escort for a budding entrepreneur. Was actually propositioned a few times. There was also this woman from the trailer park who came in with her son and his girlfriend, who invited me to their trailer park incest orgy. On a less sexual note, there was a homeless woman who came in repeatedly before we had to call the police. Her legs were rotting, and it looked like her leggings had melded into her skin. Worst thing I've ever smelled. The rot juice that dribbled down her legs got everywhere. Ugh. But I guess if you're not going for creeping scary or existential scary, there was a guy who would come in every now and then looking for my coworker. My coworker hid in the back, and I would always say she wasn't there. Not sure what exactly was going down, but it was bad enough to make her feel physically threatened, so I didn't push. Oh yeah, and there was the guy we found dead and naked in his semi that one time, although I'm not sure I would file that one under scary. Moral of the story is don't work at a gas station, if you can at all help it. I worked for a cleaning company in college. One of my assignments was a church. This wasn't a Christian run-of-the-mill church. I'm not sure what they worship, but the hours were flexible. I basically could clean it any day of the week before Saturday morning. They had service Saturday through Sunday, so the place had to be cleaned before then. One day I had a lot of work to do and didn't finish until about 7 p.m. on Friday, so I needed to go up that night. This place was in the middle of nowhere. I've cleaned there probably 60 times, but usually during the day, and it takes about 2 to 3 hours. I get there around 9 p.m. and the place is pitch black. So I go room to room turning on the lights, and as I'm walking back, the lights I turned on kept turning off. I'm like, okay, they're probably on a motion sensor and think nothing of it. I see movement from one of the rooms and I get a little freaked out. I walk over to investigate, and there's a man who I'm assuming worked at the church, shutting off the lights. I say, sorry sir, I have to clean. He just stares at me. I think maybe he doesn't speak English, so I turn the light on and he grunts at me. The rest of the time I'm cleaning, he watches me and turns off every light that I turn on after I move from that room. I called my boss the next morning and asked if he can contact the owner and ask if he have to clean again at night or in the evenings to let the man know I need to light clean properly. The owner replied no one from his congregation was in the building last night. I was freaked out and assumed that someone followed me or broke in while I was cleaning. Nothing ever came of it, but every time I think back I get a little shiver in my spine. I worked security for a very large 1,500 unit, 10 high-rise buildings condo complex on the beach years ago. One morning at like 4 a.m., the local police department called our gatehouse and asked if we had seen anyone suspicious walking around with a gun because they had a report of someone on the beach with a gun. The guard at the guardhouse notified the 11 other guards on the property via radio to keep an eye out for someone with a gun and to lock down the building lobbies. I was doing a patrol and at one of the pools, and not any sooner than the radio call finished, on the other side of the glass wall was the person in question. As soon as he heard the radio, he put the gun in his mouth and blew his brains all over the glass wall I was standing by. If it wasn't for the glass, his brains and blood would have been all over me. I calmly radioed it in, and my backup guard came over ready for a fight. I want to say I was in shock, but that week it was the third thing of significance that happened. The day before that, a car exploded on the property, no one hurt from a leaking fuel line, and the day before that, a police chase ended at the property, which involved 4 cars. The suspects were in a pickup that rolled like 5 times. 2 of the suspects were in the bed of the truck and died on the scene, and the other lifelined to the hospital. Me being the security manager, I was stuck at work for 8 extra hours doing police reports, and I was about to head home as I only work nights when we were short-staffed. Worked at a gas station in a small town. My usual customers were snow workers and the occasional cop. Had 2 gentlemen come in, and as I was cleaning the roller grill items and asked if they could warm up, I said yes, it was -10 outside, and went back to cleaning. After about 5 minutes, I noticed they kept looking outside, then back at me, like constantly. At first it was off, but then my gut told me something wasn't right. At this point, both of them are staring directly at me, and I knew I had to play it right. I didn't have my panic button on me, which was company policy, and it was across the store. So I continued cleaning and completely ignoring them as I slowly made my way to the register. I made myself look super busy, but slowly started my way back to the register so it wouldn't be suspicious. Thankfully, I got back to the register and had the panic button on me ready to press it. Keep in mind the guys were still staring me down. Before I pressed it, they both ran out of the store, got back in their car, and left like a bat out of hell. 5 minutes later, the county sheriff stopped in. Needless to say, shortly after that, I quit my job. I had a patient actively passing away with his 3 adult sons, 40s, when my shift started at 7 p.m. They all left and wanted to be notified after his passing. I had a student nurse, 22-ish, and one of the sons kept making inappropriate comments to her. Just creepy comments to the point I had to point blank say, "This is inappropriate. Please don't talk to my student like that." Note, I may be 25 at the time. Anyway, Dad passed around 1 a.m. with just me and my student there, and I call his creepy son, who was the point of contact. He wants to come up and spend time with him to say goodbye. Okay, cool. We have the body cleaned up and peaceful, and he comes in and spends about a minute with his dad before asking me about next steps. I tell him we're going to take him to the morgue, call the funeral home, who will come pick him up, and arrange everything else with the family in the morning. He gets extra interested in our trip to the morgue. The hairs on the back of my neck immediately stood up. He was asking who was going. Was it just us wheeling him down? Is the morgue in the basement like you see on TV? Did we need a big, strong man to accompany us down there so nothing happened? All the while staring at my student. So creepy. I very cheerfully told him that security was already on their way to escort us down there, and I've never seen someone leave a hospital room so quickly. Out of my 10 years of working nights in an ICU, that was by far the most unnerving. Got a call to a family fighting in the front yard. I got a second call to the same address that people are possibly shooting. I get there, and approximately 10 family members are scattered everywhere, screaming with their skin hanging off their bodies. This included toddlers and young children. The family put a metal bar on the utility meter to get free utilities. The gas didn't cut off when it should have. The uncle was grilling on the front porch, and when the door opened, the house exploded, causing severe burns. The brick house was bowed out from the explosion. Having a sawed-off shotgun put in my mouth, crew of at least 3 walked into our ambulance station with masks on. They wanted the boss, which was me. The leader proceeded to put a shotgun into my mouth while instructing me on what he wanted. The other robber was super nervous and kept his gun on the other 3 paramedics. Shotgun Bro took me on a walk to all the ambulances to get the drugs, morphine, Demerol, and Valium, from each drug box, all while holding the gun under my chin. Once they left, we had cops on scene within 2 minutes, but they were gone. My boss wanted me to finish the shift, and I said off and went home, where I discovered my wife in bed with anotst man. Worst day of my life. Jesus. So I've been reading these stories now for quite a few years now, and I enjoy it and I love it. This might be one of the times where I completely agree with the poster. Yeah, that could be very understandable to be the worst day of your life. Wow. I hope you're doing better now. Oof. Night shift at a toy store one night. Those laughing dolls started going off, so I went over to check it out. Turned out it was just my coworker effing with me. As we left the aisle, they went off again. We were the only two in the store, so we went back to check it out. No one was there. Then, one of the damn things fell off the shelf in front of us. We spent the last few hours standing at the register together, LOL. I worked overnight in a hardscapes yard, boulders, river rock, etc., solo, and would take deliveries at dawn. One morning a semi pulls in and sets up the staging area. I wait at the back, the door opens up, and it's like 10,000 watermelons. Just an entire semi-truck full of loose watermelons. It was so bizarre my brain couldn't process it. I thought I was dying, or already dead, or about to be killed or something. Turned out to just be a mix-up. For those few seconds, I was absolutely terrified. I'm a pipeline controller, and I alternate days and nights. We have a primary control center and also a backup site. The backup site is basically a nondescript old leased building out in the middle of nowhere that we work at every now and then when maintenance is going on at the primary site. We also use it if we're feeling sick but still want to work. We can come to the backup location while everyone else is downtown so we don't spread germs. One night I was feeling sick, so I came to the backup location for my shift. I'm in the building all by myself. Around 1 a.m. I hear a door slam in the hallway. It scares the shit out of me. No one else should be in the building. The cleaning crew had already been there earlier at 10 p.m. I get up and walk around to see if someone is there. I don't see anyone, and there are no cars in the parking lot. Alright, what the... Oh, as I'm walking back to my room, I hear what sounds like a rolling office chair moving across the linoleum flooring down the hall. At this point, I'm freaking out. I go to where I heard the noise, and there's an office chair just sitting in the hallway. It wasn't there earlier when I had gotten up to use the bathroom. I was thoroughly creeped out. I went back to my room and stayed there until my shift ended. LOL. I was doing night shift temporarily during a flood. It wasn't a flash flood, but the place I worked was by the river, so the water had risen and flooded many parts of the property. Workers had done many things to save the property from the flood using a combination of sandbags, aqua dams, commercial-grade water pumps, and literally building earthen dams in place to keep water out. Since the parking lot was flooded, they used metal scaffolding to build bridges across the parking lot so you could walk above the water. There was a thunderstorm one night, so here I am walking across metal scaffolding in the dark during a thunderstorm. The wind was strong enough to cause white caps on the floodwaters in the parking lot. I had a moment of, what the am I actually doing? I worked the night shift as a civil engineer on the Golden Gate Bridge suicide net. One night after I finished an inspection in the south span around 1 a.m., I was driving my cart back on the sidewalk on the main span where I drove past one of the usual white inspector pickup trucks in the closure area. I stopped my cart after passing the truck and looked back, realizing it wasn't one of our official trucks. It was a civilian SUV, red, lights on, engine running, nobody inside. I went up to the car and immediately my stomach sank. Keys and ignition, phone on the dashboard, and a note on their seat. I called the bridge patrol immediately, but we had to harness up and search the inside of the bridge to make sure they hadn't climbed down there. We dropped a flare in the ocean so the Coast Guard could read the tides to search for the body. Not sure if they ever found them. I think about that person who was so racked with pain that they pulled over on the bridge, left their engine running, got out, and jumped over the edge. I used to work in a group home and would clean house while the client slept. The house was 1 block from a huge field and park with a lot of foot traffic from shady individuals, drug deals in the parking lot, etc. One night I was out on the patio, rinsing out a trash bin when a car started creeping by, slow-paced and slower as they passed, then a U-turn and repeat in opposite direction. Then another U-turn, but this time they faced their lights directly on me and held. Some context, I worked in a home that housed young men who weren't at 100% mental capacity, with some not well loved in the community. These were guys that were taken care of and often flashed their expensive tech in public, sometimes loudly bragging or calling attention to their gear. Some of these guys might not have had a stellar record in town. Once it came to mind, we are about to be home invaded. I ran inside, locked the doors, grabbed a loose 10-pound weight held in my good hand with my phone at the ready in my left as I leaned near the front door. I heard a car door open and slam, then another, the same. I heard chatter. 10 long seconds passed. Then the doors opened and shut again, and they drove off. I don't know. I could have just been super paranoid over a lost food delivery driver or something. Almost went down before cold feet struck. All I know is that was the scariest experience working a night shift.